What's up Stitches? My name is Michael and welcome to or back to my YouTube channel. This week I'm doing a bit of an impromptu video because I expected to have the life-size Among Us crewmate done by now. I don't know why I thought I'd be able to do that. I haven't been able to finish it and I also still need to order more supplies for it. So I am doing a bit of a different video than I was expecting. I'll just give you guys a little sneak peek of where I'm up to on the crewmate. It's shaping up quite nicely. It's probably about, I'm sat on the floor. That's how tall it is from the floor compared to my torso, so it's quite long. It still has a bit of a way to go, but it'll be done very soon. I'm hoping I can have a video about it put together for you guys next week, so subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss that upload. In today's video I'm going to be talking about something that I've wanted to do for quite some time, and I've decided now is probably the best time in my life with my situation to do this, and that is charity. So I am in a fortunate enough position where I have quite a lot of time on my hands. I don't have the funds to financially support some charities, but I definitely have time that I can dedicate to certain charities. So I have decided that now is a good time, especially coming into the winter months, that I want to do some knitting for charity. This was initially inspired by a very good friend of mine who goes by Unicorn Ninja 94 on her social media, who knit little sleeves for preemie babies in a hospital so they don't scratch their cannulas out or anything, which was really sweet and it was really inspiring. And so I've decided I kind of want to do something charitable to help other people with something that I am easily able to do, such as knitting. As I've shown you guys in my podcast, I have a lot of kind of vintage yarn and yarn that's been passed down to me from my great auntie, and I am probably not going to use that yarn for myself for a number of reasons, including a lot of the colours I just wouldn't use for myself. And so I decided I need to destash. This kind of destash as well was inspired by the minimalists. I don't know if you guys have heard much about them, but they have a couple of books out, they have a documentary on Netflix, and they have a podcast, and I've been listening religiously to their podcast recently. And just hearing all that and hearing, I think there was one specific episode, can't remember who the guest was and I can't remember what number it was, but they were talking about decluttering and how physical things, if you have them in your space and they don't have a use and they just kind of take up space, can actually take up a lot of space in your mind. And I definitely feel that. I feel a lot of stress. As much as I love yarn, I feel a lot of stress looking at all the yarn that I have that I'm probably not going to use for projects right away. And so I kind of want to get rid of all of that yarn and only buy with intention. So buying yarn when I have a specific project in mind rather than just buying yarn for yarn's sake. I've also got some new needles, that are enabling me to knit very speedily. I will talk about them a bit more in my next podcast, but I have time on my hands, I have the supplies, so I think it made sense for me to knit lots. Before I get into what charities I'm going to be talking to, I kind of wanted to ask you guys a question. I want to make another cardigan and I have two ideas and I'm going to make them into videos and kind of how-tos and stuff, but I am torn between making and designing the folklore cardigan, the Taylor Swift one, and the kind of brightly coloured, I think it's called Absolutely Fabulous cardigan, which was worn by, I'm going to say her name wrong, Jisoo from Blackpink. Very bright, very colourful, very pretty, very fun, and as I've mentioned before, and as you can see, I'm always wearing black, so any kind of knitwear with colour adds a little pop of colour to my wardrobe. So let me know in the comments down below, should I knit the folklore cardigan or should I knit the bright colourful Blackpink cardigan? So it's no surprise to anyone, we've all been living through this now for over 6 months. We are living in a pandemic and it's a difficult time for everyone, but I can't help but think about those people who are sleeping rough and don't have a permanent residence. And it's getting colder, and we all know, I say we all know, those of you who are Brits know that the winters here in the UK are horrendous. And so one cause that I have seen is called Hats for Homeless. I'll put links for everything down in the description below. So this is kind of knitting nice warm woolly hats for those people who are sleeping rough. Obviously they're going to be cold, so Hats for Homeless is something that I am going to be knitting for. I'm going to try and look for another cause in the UK where I can knit scarves as well, so hats and scarves for people who are sleeping rough and homeless. So for the Hats for Homeless, this is running till the 7th of December, so this is something that I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time on earlier on so I can get it done in time for the deadline. And this is the 4th year it's been running with this particular charity. I can't remember what they're called. I'll flash it up on the screen here for you guys. But they've been running it for 4 years and it's been very successful. I think last year they sent out over 1,000 hats, which is really nice. And they also give you loads of free hat patterns, so it's, although you're knitting the same thing over and over again, you can probably spice it up a little bit, doing different patterns and making it a bit more interesting with the stitch patterns. Charity number 2 that I'm going to be knitting for is called Knit a Square. And Knit a Square delivers these squares to over 60 different countries, and it originated from a need of helping orphan populations in Africa who were orphaned by either poverty or the growing population of HIV and AIDS, and so sending squares to them to kind of give love and comfort. I think there's a nice quote that this website said as, "Crocheting and knitting for charity is an act of love," and I think these children especially need that extra little bit of love. They don't have the parental figures that, you know, I'm so lucky to have. They have a quite nice tagline that's "one square at a time, we make a difference," so it really feels like you're doing something to really help someone. One thing that's quite good for me is that they take in the individual squares, so you don't have to sew them together, which I really like. There are people who are in the recipient countries who sit there and sew each square together how they kind of like it. They get kind of a choice on how it's all designed, so they can make it nice and personal for each child. And it means I don't have to sew up squares, which is a win-win. The third and final charity that I'm going to be knitting for is called Knit for Peace. I was doing some research on Knit for Peace earlier today, and reading what they do really made me feel like I wanted to be a part of this charity. You're knitting garments for women who've had to flee their countries due to war or civil unrest and are often in camps, and you know, as we all know, you can be quite dehumanized in these camps. You're not always treated in the most kind manner, and in some situations you're treated in a very cruel manner. And so these garments go to those women to kind of give some love and warmth to those. Also trafficked women who are quite far from home, who are seeking asylum, and also victims of domestic violence who have had to get away from their situation and find a safe shelter. So this, you know, the garments go to them, but something they also do is they collect scrap yarn and needles and all that sort of thing. They also do tend to go into places like prison, and there are kind of civil service things that inmates will do for outside. So they go into prison, teach them how to knit, and then those inmates can then knit and donate back to the charity. So what I may do is I will probably focus on knitting the hats first, and then kind of interchange between the squares and the Knit for Peace items, because there's no kind of end date on those ones. And if I get to the point where I don't have time or space to continue knitting for charity, I am tempted to send all of my unwanted yarn to Knit for Peace. And I recently mentioned that I got some new needles, so I'll probably send my older needles over to that charity so that they can use those to help. Now, I would encourage you, if you have the time and the ability to do so, then please do think about knitting for a charity. You can also crochet if you're a crocheter, then they accept crocheted items as well. Knit and crochet, they really don't mind. But if you can afford to, then you can also donate directly to each of these causes. As I mentioned before, all the links are down in the description. So the items that I'm going to be making, obviously I'm going to be making hats for the Hats for Homeless, squares for the Knit a Square, and then Knit for Peace, they kind of give you a load of things that they need at the time, and then you can kind of choose what you want to make. And one thing they are looking for at the moment is hand knit dolls with black or brown skin tones. They want dolls that the children can then relate to and feel comfortable with. For Knit for Peace, I am going to be knitting socks and hats. So I'm going to send most of the hats to the Hats for Homeless, but I will be doing a few hats for the Knit for Peace. I am tempted to do some jumpers, maybe some chunky jumpers, because I've got quite a bit of chunky scrap wool, but I want to knit as much as I possibly can. I'll probably be focusing on the smaller items. The patterns I'm going to be using are going to be patterns that they advertise on their website. I might go elsewhere and look for other patterns to make it more interesting, and probably the socks, I'm probably gonna knit the cottage socks by Hooked On by Tilly, I think it's called. But generally I'm just gonna see what they have on the websites and I'll probably use those. For the squares, I think I'm going to try to make them fun and different. Maybe like swatches, pattern swatches, see what I can make from them just to make it a bit more fun and exotic rather than just garter stitch or stockinette. And yeah, as I said, if I have loads of yarn left over and I don't have enough time to finish a lot of these items, then I will send the yarn off. One video idea I had was to see how many items I can knit in 12 hours and have that very strict time thing. Kind of see how fast I can knit each of the items, so that's something I'll be doing in the coming future. Obviously, the Among Us crewmates are coming first, so next week's video is going to be about the life-size one. The week after is going to be a podcast, I believe, and then the week after that, the finished object, if it's finished by then. Then after I've done that, I will be releasing the tutorial for the Among Us crewmates. So if you're looking forward to any of those videos, then please do subscribe down below. If you liked the content of this video, then please do give me a like. That lets me know that you like what I'm doing here. And if you want to see constant progress on how I'm doing with these charity works, then head on over to my Instagram at @SmichaelGoesKnitting so you can see how I'm doing. I will probably be posting regular updates. It was nice hanging out with you guys. I hope this has inspired you to look out and see what you can do for charity to help people in this difficult world. You know, we're all stuck on this planet together. We might as well be nice to each other. And obviously, I want you guys to know that these aren't the only charities out there that are accepting knitted items. If you have more of a passion for other issues and that you want help that way, then please do research and find different charities that you can knit for. I'm sure they'll love any help and support they can get. And do continue to support other charities that are helping those who are vulnerable and marginalised in society. It's kind of our job to help those who can't really help themselves. So I'm going to be doing what I can when I can to help thy fellow man. I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope it inspired you, and I look forward to seeing you next week with my Among Us crewmate. Stay wholesome and happy knitting.